All right, well, if you saw the event, I was going to talk about understanding GraphQL through the lens of hip-hop. That was a lot of words, so I just left off through the lens of hip-hop, but as promised, I'll still talk about that. Before we get into that, has you ever seen the show before, The Get Down? Awesome. So notice there's only maybe 10% of the room. This show got canceled. And that's probably, by show of hands, that's why it got canceled. But I actually love this show. Showing the lens of hip-hop as it was migrating music in the Bronx, was actually migrating from disco to actually this new wave of music, which was hip-hop. And I like to use this analogy for a lot of tech that I do and a lot of the talks I do, because at the end of the day, hip-hop is nothing but sampled disco tracks. If you look at a lot of the hip-hop in the mid-'80s and early '90s, they actually recycled a lot of the disco tracks, including this group called Grandmaster Flash. Who's ever heard of this group? Cool. So yeah, they had the popular song called The Message. You guys know like the song, it's like, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. Yeah, the one guy in the back is finishing it for me. So that's like the Happy Feet song. That's called The Message. But the other song is like, my brother's doing fast on my mother's TV, says he's watching too much. This is not healthy. The kids in the daytime, Dallas said. Anyway, I didn't come here to rap. The cool thing about that is that rap, music itself became more of just partying and like what rap is basically today. But it became social commentary for the neighborhood and what was actually happening in the Bronx. So all these guys came up and they were basically just doing their poetry to music and then creating careers on that. At the time, it wasn't much of a career, but it grew into what we know of it as today, which is awesome. And that didn't stop there because shortly after the 80s, we actually had gangster rap towards the late 80s. Any gangster rap fans? I won't rap gangster rap for you guys. But one of the most popular is Tupac. You guys all know Tupac. He's from the Bay. He's from Oakland. Actually, he's from New York, but he actually grew up in Oakland as well. He kind of split time between California and New York. Mom was part of the Black Panthers. Anyway, we don't have to talk about Tupac's history and where he came from. But the cool thing about Tupac, one of his most popular songs with Snoop Dogg, which is the song To America's Most Wanted. And I'm blanking on the words. He actually sampled The Message, a song I was just butchering earlier. He actually sampled that song pretty heavily, one of the songs with Snoop Dogg. So back in 1996, Tupac, his career ended, unfortunately, because he was shot in Las Vegas. But I get all the way up to that because in 1996, it's the same year Tupac died, but it's also the same year that we got REST. So you guys, that was like a long transition. You guys like, where am I going with this? Why? But yeah, REST APIs back in Minnesota, the guy who created it, he actually presented this as a thing. And it's like, this is the way we're using APIs and JavaScript. It's amazing that that was the same year that it happened. Like so much life, but then also death in the same year. So you guys are like, give it a rest. Well, I just want to explain this architecture too as well. So this is like, the company I used to work for, we were really big in this Jamstack architecture. It's like, it's when you have like a bottle of jam and then you have like peanut butter, and peanut butter being like your API and jam being your clients, like your mobile app or like the stuff we were just looking at earlier with Firebase. Then we talk through that with APIs. And the way we do that is like through REST APIs, hopefully, or if you're using like SOAP or all these other XML fans out there? Okay. That's why XML was canceled. Just kidding. The cool thing about GraphQL, which is what I'm actually talking about, is that it sits pretty nicely within this like streamline of having your separate jars of your client and your API. And that's what I want to kind of focus on. So I came from a team as a full-time engineer where I interviewed in Go for some reason to be a full stack engineer. And then when I got there, it was like a bait and switch. And they said, okay, you're a JavaScript developer. We need React help. So I basically took the keys to become a front-end developer because no one else wanted to write JavaScript. But because of that, I just drew a line in the sand. I was like, I'm not working on the API because I have way too much work to do on the front end. And I had this idea where I wanted to make a mobile app basically on the product that I was working on so I can look at my deploys for my development tools on my phone. But I didn't own the API and I didn't want to have to ship code infrastructure, and we were a very small team, so I would be blocking people if I was like, hey, GraphQL is cool. Let's just like rm-rf a lot of stuff and like add GraphQL in there. That wasn't a possibility, so I needed a way to sample some of the API that we had already and then be able to test GraphQL to see if it was like a thing to do. So I heard of this thing called wrappers, and they were really cool. And the way I discovered it is because GraphQL.org, there's actually a blog post about wrapping your existing REST API with GraphQL. Who's ever done this in production at all? Okay, not a lot of us. But yeah, this is actually a really cool way to sample GraphQL, just like all the cool kids out there who listen to your gangster rap. You can sample GraphQL as a wrapper. So I basically took a chance on wrappers, and what I did is I created this thing called a GraphQL gateway. Now this is a common term. I did this like 2.5 years ago. This is like you can like use Amplify now with AWS. There's a couple other tools that already do this for you, Hasura, Prisma. They basically do this for you. It's really easy. It's a CLI tool. But I had to kind of discover this because GraphQL has only been around for a handful of years. So I created this GraphQL gateway. So I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe if you're interested in GraphQL, interested in trying out, maybe look into like a gateway solution if you don't have access to the API or you don't want to own the keys to break the entire API. So I don't know why that W is so small. Google Slides, I guess. But I do want to say that my rap game is strong now. I also want to mention that this is not winning any awards. So like, I just had to get a job done. I had to paint the picture and like slick my hair back and basically get something shipped to production so I can try out GraphQL. So you want to take it with a grain of salt, like the things with like caching and the things with like error handling and stuff like that to GraphQL is not the best when you wrap it, but it will give you something to play with. I also wanted to point out wrapping sells and that this chance type wrap does make sense, even though he's on hiatus right now. So again, small words. I should have probably double checked the font. GitHub actually has a GraphQL API. Did anybody know that? All right, so if you go to github.com, we do have our newest version of our API. The version 4 is all GraphQL. So the cool thing about sampling GraphQL and sampling APIs is that you don't have to actually do this gateway thing. You can actually just use GitHub and build a little side project. So, wow. That got cut off. But anyway, developer.github.com/v4/explorer. Just follow the trail, the ... And that's where you can sort of try it out. Before I'm done, I just got 2 more slides. I do want to say there's this whole thing between like West Coast, East Coast, gangster rap, and like the REST APIs and the GraphQL. Like, that doesn't have to be a thing. Like, we don't have to shoot each other in the streets because of like the way we want to consume APIs. I honestly think that it should be REST plus GraphQL. So try it out, give it a chance, and I'm BWO on Twitter.